Hi everyone, I'm Natalia. Welcome to my channel. Today I want to talk to you about projections, and more projections on in YouTube comments and in fact on any social platform. Anytime we tend to engage in commentary of any shape or form, how to recognize that what you're engaging in is perhaps an active or passive form of projection, or perhaps if it is a projection of the shadow self. Projection is often deeply misunderstood. People think everything is projection, and to some extent it is true, but it's projection of what kind that makes it really a big difference. Projections is also very fascinating to me because as a psychologist, to me, when I'm able in my life to spot projective material coming from me, it's as akin to receiving those essential ingredients to make the best meal possible, which then I can consume and change myself from the inside out. So projections in my life are very important because that's the ways that I learn more about myself, and I call them golden crumbs. I hope all of you look at the projections after this video differently and start to also recognize them. So to start off, let's consult the expert. This is Daryl Sharp's, which is excellent, Jung lexicon, where he goes over Jungian terms and concepts and principles in a, I guess, a digestible language. Let's consult the oracle because this is truly is an oracle of our life. I think Jung is very much as an oracle, being such a spiritual being. So let me read two short segments that I outlined to give you something to think about as I go through this video and talk about things. Projections. An automatic process whereby contents of one's own unconscious are projected to be in others. Projections are not a conscious process. You're not consciously thinking every time I comment on somebody's YouTube video, I am projecting. One meets projections, one does not make them. Therefore, you're not consciously making projection, you're meeting them, because they're part of your unconscious that you have not met yet, have not recognized yet within yourself. It is possible to project certain characteristics onto another person who does not possess them at all. I think you are A, B, C, D, E. In reality, you don't possess any of these characteristics, and they have nothing to do with you. But the one thing projected upon may unconsciously encourage it. Through projection, one can create a series of imaginary relationships that often have little or nothing to do with the outside world. String of projections, in other words, can create a visual, a perspective of how the world is, when in reality it has nothing to do with the world. Projection also has positive effects. That's important for us to recognize. In everyday life, it facilitates interpersonal relations. In addition, when we assume that some quality or characteristic is presented in another, and then through experience find that this is not so, I think you're a elitist. Oh, through experience with you, I realized this is not so. We can learn something about ourselves. Realizing that I made an assumptions, I'm now learning something about myself. This involves withdrawing or dissolving projection. Therefore, by realizing this, you are withdrawing or dissolving a projection. Therefore, it's no longer projection, and you learn something about yourself. And finally, Jung distinguishes between passive projections and active projections. Passive projections is completely automatic and unintentional, like falling in love. You're projecting your ideal into the person you just met. You fell in love. You don't really truly see them for who they are. Then you get married, and then life happens down the road, and you spend more time together, and then you realize, oh shit, you're not the person I thought you were, because you've fallen in love with your own projection of the ideal. And there's actually, I have to remember to put it below, excellent book that talks about that. The less we know about another person, the easier it is to passively project unconscious aspects of ourselves onto them. Active projections, on the other hand, is better known as empathy. We feel ourselves in the other's shoes. Empathy that extends to the point where we lose our standpoint becomes identification. And finally, and this is what I see the most on TheraTube, the projection of the personal shadow generally falls on persons of the same sex. Because generally, I mean, Jung, we have to acknowledge, Jung was quite sex binary in terms of gender and understanding of gender. So was Freud, quite sexist, actually, if you read quite a bit of their material. In this case, what he's saying is that usually you over-identify, or you see the projection, you project onto something that seems familiar to care for the same sex. So for me, it will be more likely to project onto women, although also project onto men, but it will be more likely to project onto women because I'm more likely to, my unconscious is more likely, I would say, recognize things I idealize in them or recognize things I devalue and has disevolved within myself. So on a collective level, it gives rise to war. This is shadow projection, war, scapegoating, and confrontations between political parties. Projection that takes place in the context of therapeutic relationship is called transfers or content transfers. Okay, this is relevant. Another thing that I picked up by another source, this is just simply Wikipedia. Projections, shadow projections often incorporates blame shifting and can manifest as shame dumping. Having said that, now we have a little bit more understanding of projections. Let's break it down a little bit. So we know that projection oftentimes happen unconsciously. You're not making a projection. The projection is, you meet the projection because you're meeting the unconscious aspect of yourself. And the projections can be in a form of active, passive, and shadow. The difference being, we always see unconsciously. Remember, your consciousness self is only 10% of orbiting the reality that we exist. 90% is still unconscious. Imagine how much we all don't know about ourselves. And it doesn't matter if you're going through psychoanalysis, it doesn't matter if you are a psychologist yourself, there's always going to be a huge, tremendous percentage underneath the 10% that we're not in touch with, that we're not aware of. And this is why projections are so great, because they can help us, lend us the nutrients to learn more about ourselves. So every time we see somebody, we oftentimes, I would say, to make it simple, do two things. We either see something in them that we very badly want, or we have ability to actually be like that, and therefore we idealize them, also a projection. And then there is a shadow projection where we see something unconsciously, our unconsciousness spot something in somebody else that we also recognize in ourselves, but we have either devalued or disavowed that part of ourselves and don't want to incorporate it into our consciousness, and therefore it's in the shadow self. That's the part that I see most often on the TheraTube comments. You can spot projection a mile away. What always gives away the shadow projection is not only emotional supercharged tone in which it is written, it is always going to be supercharged, but the language it uses. It is often a language of pointing a finger. You are this, you are that. I think you're this, I think you're that. How dare you? It's a finger of blame, of trying to shame a person, of judging a person, of coming across as if somebody's righteous. And it always feels reactive versus responsive. Now, here's the thing. Yesterday, I released a video that shows the premise of the channel. And it's a little interlude of me sitting on the floor behind Banksy's gorilla with a mask on as I remove my makeup off. And it's obviously a very literal way of representing a metaphor, that the premise of the channel is to remove my mask. And in doing so, I allow myself to come closer to the more authentic aspects of who I am. It's also an essence of this channel for anybody else who's also interested in removing their masks in any shape or form. Does this mean we'll have to show up on YouTube as truly ourselves? Of course not. There's always going to be things about me that are personal to me that I will not want to indulge in sharing on here. removing the mask is not about being fully transparent or being fully seen. It's about being more true to yourself, first and foremost, before you can even be true to the world. What's interesting about that image of me wiping off makeup and removing the literal makeup mask, which is also hypothetical mask, is that on the internet, every time we comment, and every time somebody engages in a shadow form of projections where they devalue a person, and by doing so, they're showing the parts of themselves that they devalue, we all need to realize that when we do that, when we engage in shadow projections, we're actually removing masks. We're removing our masks to let the world see who we are, to let the world see that there's parts of ourselves that still need to work, that parts of ourselves that are still unconscious. And when we do that, we need to realize that it's not us. We think we are the ones in control of the comments. It is not you who's in control of your comments. It's your shadow self that is now in control of you. So it's holding you now on a tight leash. And the whole point of Jungian psychology is to liberate yourself from the whole unconscious happening. Because unless you are able to see your darkness, it's going to forever rule your life. And you're going to think that you're actually in control of everything when the opposite is true. Projections are really interesting. And as I said, they're easy to spot, in my opinion, at least. And I know that some of you watching and you're thinking, well, what the heck? Does it mean that everything is a projection? Now, am I not allowed to comment and share my opinion or share critiques that I feel on anybody's channel? Of course not. And this is where it becomes really essential to be able to distinguish between a shadow projection and between a constructed opinion or a constructive critique. The difference that you can distinguish the two is, first and foremost, before you sit down and commenting on anybody's video, what is your intent for leaving a comment? Is your intent to dump, like this says, shame dump your projection, shadow projection? And you may not be aware that that's your intent, right? Because this is unconscious. But one way is to spot it. After you leave a comment, how does it make you feel? If you feel like your head is like a balloon, has really got exponentially expanded, and you walk away from that comment feeling righteous and feeling like you just told them exactly how you feel, that's first and foremost is something for you to recognize as a shadow projection. That your ego balloon is now so swollen. You think that you know it all, and they don't know anything. The way that you can realize that you are engaging in a constructive dialogue, constructive criticism, constructive engagement, sharing of opinion, is when your comment is absent of supercharged righteous shame, blame tone, but carries an opportunity for a person to reflect on what you said, and it has an openness for responsiveness. And the way you know it, and we know this, I mean, there's lately been so many videos there was a video on dark pricing, and I saw the comments and I could see some people who strongly disagreed, and they were able to express in a constructive way why they disagreed without doing this. And it was great. This is how you can spot that this is a great way of engaging in a dialogue. Engaging in a dialogue is a responsive form of communication, and it's also open, meaning I think there's a lot in this video that I may agree on, some of the things I may disagree on. Here's some of my thoughts and how things come across for me. What are your thoughts on that? Have you thought about yada, yada, yada? You're opening a door for the creator of the content to engage and now to reflect. When we dispel shadow projections, it never opens up a door. There is no door. It is win over, power over type of mentality. It is my way or the highway. Only my opinion matters and yours doesn't. When we as creators engage in this type of communication, we're now potentially can fall prey to counter projection of our own. And we often do that because we get defensive. And that also says more about ourselves. As a creator of this YouTube, and also I have been having for 4 years the Dr. Z PhD YouTube where I talk about transgender, non-binary adult issues. I know a lot about commentary projections by experiencing it first and foremost. Am I an expert in this? Absolutely not. But imagine how amount of projections I get, especially on the channel, given the context and the content that I talk about. As a creator, I found the best way to engage, if one chooses to engage, with shadow projection that you spot are twofold. One, you actively ignore it. Actively ignoring is setting your boundary. Two, if you choose to comment, in my experience, the best thing that has worked for me is this. Thank you for sharing. That's it. There's nothing else to say, right? Because they're not sharing anything about anything constructively for you to open up to. They're saying more about themselves and their shadow projections. And to engage in their shadow projection is, for me, in my opinion, contributing to the swelling of their ego balloon, and I refuse to do that. It doesn't interest me. It's not exciting because I'm not engaging with the person, I'm engaging with their shadow unconscious. Not fun, it's not interesting. I'm all for constructive discussion, constructive criticism, constructive feedback. And I think we can all, myself included, learn how to do that better, especially today. Social media, social platforms, social avenues such as YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, you name it, gave us all a platform, completely free platform. We can go on the platform and we can share our voice, we can tell our stories, we can educate, we can do so many things by showing up. It also gave everybody else, myself included, a platform to be able to engage. I received something from you and now I want to give something back. But what is it that you want to give somebody back? Do you want to just give back you disavowed, devalued parts of yourself? Or do you want to give somebody back something of value? Something that can help that person, or something that can enhance the dialogue and enhance the engagement. I was talking to my husband yesterday about AI and the proliferation of AI. I have a lot of clients who are writers, who are especially writing for cinema. And right now the Writers Guild are on strike here in Los Angeles for many reasons. AI is one of the reasons. And I was talking about this AI and the concern of AI replacing humans and the bigger wide implications that we're going to have robots operating this planet. And I realized that it's not that we're going to have robots operating the planet. It's just that social media, technology in general, is turning us into robots. It's turning us into walking technical mechanism. It is, especially for the younger generation, it completely shifts the way they see and understand the world through the glass of technology, through the glass of social media. And to me, when we're walking, completely unconscious walking of our projective shadows, there's no other analogy that is stronger than that to represent a complete robot, being a puppeteer, being controlled by the unconscious. So that's what I had to say about the projections and how to spot them. If you're a creator or if you're somebody, how to respond to them. There is content I come across all the time where I feel like my blood boils from 0 to 100 and I feel myself getting defensive and I feel like I just want to let this person know. For me personally, that is the biggest sign that I need to step away and I need to reevaluate what is all of that telling me. And if you really want to explore your projections, you have the best tool at your disposal. Pack of cards, pen, paper. That's all you need. Of course, if you can indulge in psychoanalysis or psychotherapy, that's wonderful too. But guess what? That's a luxury in these days. So that's what I have to say about projections. I hope that we can all move forward, being a little bit more self-aware. And for me personally, the whole premise of being here is to level myself up as a person. And hopefully by leveling myself up, I can mirror back to somebody else how to level themselves up. Hopefully people who watch my content also want to level themselves up. I have zero interest in leveling myself up on somebody else's shoulders, by climbing up on somebody else's shoulders and tearing them down. And if that's something you're interested in, unsubscribe right now. This is not the channel for you. You're going to not like my content. That's not the premise of my content. So that's all I got to say about projections. Comment, let me know what your thoughts are, and I'll talk to you all next time. Bye.